What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Steve Hall. Steve is the founder of the Revive Stronger podcast. He's an established online physique coach, and he's a WNBF pro natural bodybuilder. This episode was extremely exciting for me. I've been watching the Revive Stronger podcast and learning from it for many years now, and have drawn inspiration from the work that Steve's done and his own personal natural bodybuilding journey. In our conversation, Steve shares about the origins of Revive Stronger, including what it's been like to regularly interview and have conversations with some of the best known fitness experts in the industry, like Dr. Mike Israetel and Dr. Eric Helms. Steve also shares about his inspirational personal natural bodybuilding story, which actually got its start from when he experienced a serious injury early on. Plus, he shares about his recent 2024 natural bodybuilding competition season where he won his pro card and what it was like to work with coach Cliff Wilson throughout the process. From start to finish, this episode is engaging, inspirational, and full of insight, and I know you're going to love it. So without further ado, let's dive into it. I've been listening to Revive Stronger, the Revive Stronger podcast for years, and it's had a huge positive impact on me. I've learned a ton from it. I'm wondering if someone were to approach you and they had no idea what it was, and they were to ask you, "Hey, Steve, what's Revive Stronger? What's the Revive Stronger podcast?" How would you answer that?
Great question. I've never been asked that before. And first of all, thank you also for inviting me on, having me on here. It's nice to be on the other end, as I'm normally doing your job of the interviewer. And actually, it's probably harder being on this end. I don't know. I don't want to say your job's the easy half, but I sometimes feel that way where I'm blessed with guests who can just ramble. Here's me rambling, and also for listening for so long. And to know that it's had a really positive impact on you. I know again, I would put it to the guests I have on, your Eric Helms, your Mike Israetels, Brad Schoenfelds, the gamut of evidence-based practitioners, and outside of that too, like it's down to them and their willingness to give me their time. But I know, having ran it for so long and seen so many podcasts come and go, like I know I do something there, so I will take a little bit of credit for kind of organizing it and having the questions and having the I guess the consistency to keep going. But with that out of the way, in terms of your question, like if someone was like, okay, what's the Revive Stronger podcast? So I'm an elevator pitch for it almost. I guess it would be a podcast that is for the person who is interested in bodybuilding, whether or not they're just getting interested in starting their journey or they're quite deep within it. I think both can find episodes within the podcast useful and interesting. I will say it's more for the person who has a good amount of experience. It's not really newbie friendly, despite what I just said. But I think you can pick things up quite quickly through it as well, because again, I have world leading experts who use the latest evidence and their own experiences and the anecdote that they've developed through their years of their own lifting and their work with clients to develop practical, helpful advice to further you in your own bodybuilding career. And so it's for that individual who's interested in bodybuilding, particularly naturally without performance enhancing drugs, who want clear, no BS, evidence based, practical advice, and want to stay on top of the latest evidence, but also get inspired by hearing incredible athletes and stories along the way too. So hopefully that describes it. I'm also, interestingly enough, just on a slight tangent for you, Sam, this year I'm looking to expand the podcast a little bit wider. I would say historically it's been very much like evidence-based, talking to the leading experts within the field about the latest research and how that practically applies to you, your clients, for your bodybuilding goals. But I'm looking to broaden it a little bit to include, I've had some like athletes on, like a Wesley Vissers, for example, had him on, not even natural, of course, but enhanced. But I think he can be inspirational for a lot of the natural guys. But I've just recorded a roundtable that will come out soon with some high level elite natural bodybuilders. I've obviously had that sort of ilk of person on anyway, but I'm looking to do more roundtables like that. And then also potentially people outside of our space, but are still kind of within fitness, health, well-being type of thing. There's one coming out this weekend, in fact, that's like cool. This person, I would say the majority of the listeners won't know who they are, but typically it's people know. Sorry, I just rambled for a long cohort there, but hopefully that gave you some sort of answer.
No, that's amazing. And I've been listening. I think since you can let me know if I'm off on this, but I think some of the first episodes that I started tuning in on were like around 2017, like
Yeah.
my last year of college, like right around there. I think I stumbled into the Revive Stronger podcast as I was searching different fitness questions in the YouTube search engine. And I have learned an absolute ton. It's really cool when you think about it. Like we go and we spend lots of money to get a college degree so we can listen to experts speak about what we're interested in. And I think it's a gift to be able to listen to a show where we get to every week get to listen to an expert that's basically at the top of their field. Like you mentioned, Dr. Mike. I think I first ran into Dr. Mike in your podcast. He's like been a frequent guest, and long before he like really blew up on social media, which is really cool. Eric Helms, all of the evidence based guys and athletes too. I remember listening to like Andrew Chappelle, who's also an evidence-based guy, but he's also like one of the best competitors out there, and he's kind of the top of the UKFDA. Is that right?
He's a WNBF pro, which used to be affiliated with the UKFBA exactly, and
right.
he did well competing with them too. But yeah, they've since separated. But yeah, he's a
Right.
very good
Gotcha.
competitor here in the UK. He's one of the. There's only a handful of WNBF UK pros, so yeah, he's definitely one of them, and he's been a pro for a long time too.
Yeah. So getting to listen to people like him that are great practitioners and they're very heavily into their research, really helpful for people like me that need help interpreting this stuff to get an understanding. I need someone to explain these things to me. So I've learned a ton. I'm really curious about the origin of, firstly, the podcast itself. So can you paint a picture, like what was life like during that time? If it was like around 2016, 2017, around the time that you got started with it, what made you decide like, hey, I think I want to interview experts in the fitness industry? And yeah, what kind of drove you to get started with that?
Yeah, I think, and actually, to answer your first question, this you've just kind of triggered something in my head that helps answer that. Was as the interviewer, I am not a PhD. I am a practitioner. I am a bodybuilder who absolutely loves this thing. So I am very much asking questions that I want answered, and also that I think the audience listening, the majority of them are more similar to me than they are maybe the guest, for example. So it's coming from like a practitioner, practical, very practical lens versus like a research heavy sort of lens, which I think is why it appeals to a lot of individuals like yourself who are more similar to me than maybe the kind of the the PhD that I'm interviewing. And that actually speaks to the origins of it all as well, because I'm coming from it as a student. And even now, having done it almost a decade, I still come in as a student. Sometimes people will kind of critique me for sitting there and like nodding and agreeing with everything. It doesn't mean I agree with everything. It's just the way I deal with conversations is I like nod and I encourage, and that's the way I kind of build rapport and want the person to feel like I'm interested. Like I kind of do that, sort of have that role. You see some people sit there and they're just like deadpan, like, and I'm like, I've seen people do that on podcasts. I'm like, are you just not interested? Because I'd have to force myself to like hold that. I'm also bringing people on who are experts, and so I want to hear their opinions and their thoughts. And even if I maybe disagree with them, like I'm not always going to like try and have a debate with them, because it's bringing them onto the platform to explain their thoughts and feelings behind things. I do try and ask the hard questions, especially more as I've got deeper into kind of becoming more confident on the podcast. But I'm always coming from a student perspective, which is why I tend to shut up and just ask the question and let them go. And I will never almost never speak over a guest. It's very rare that happens. Some podcasters do it a lot more than I would like. But yeah, so the origins, really cool. Essentially, it comes back to, I think it was 2015. Myself and another individual within the fitness industry who's no longer really part of it, were bringing over Mike Israetel for a seminar. Uh, and I didn't really know who Mike was particularly well at the time, but I'd read the Scientific Principles of Strength Training, which was like one of their biggest projects and books at the start. And I was like, hey, this is a great book. And yeah, I'm totally game for bringing Mike over to do a seminar. He also was coming along with James Hoffman to present. Melissa Davis also came. I don't think she presented though, but she was there too. And so that was the first, I think, international seminar they'd done. It was the first I'd ever held. And so it was great bringing them over. And I was just like blown away by Mike's ability to speak and present information. He was also coming at it from a different angle than I'd been exposed to before. People will know, particularly as earlier within the space, Eric Helms and Mike Israetel, they kind of came at these discussion topics and principles from like quite different angles. There are times of which they disagreed on various subjects like the size of surplus or, I don't know, deload frequencies and like the nuance, basically. I think they've come to align much more closely as they've got to know one another, and I don't know, it just has happened that way. But I think they were a bit diverse at first, and Eric Helms and 3DMJ were people I was learning from. So I was like, oh, this stuff that Mike's presenting, he's coming from it at a different angle I've not heard discussed. This is cool. And it was very beneficial, and I learned a lot. And basically the seminar went super well, and there was a bunch of questions left over because there was like Q&As at the end of each presentation. I think there was a lot of people like me who were like, hey, I have so many questions because this is just information I've not seen presented in this sort of way before. And so I just reached out to Mike and I was like, hey, do you want to hop on, record a podcast like to discuss things? And he was like, yeah, sure. And at the end of that first episode, I wanted to kind of do more. And Mike also, I think it was basically both of us were like, do you want to do that again? That was quite fun. So I started doing these like Ask the Doctor Q&A episodes with Mike, and they were just tons of fun. I was learning a ton at that time. It was like so many novel new questions. It's kind of a shame because, like you said, I've had Mike on a lot. So by the time, I don't know how many Q&A episodes we've done, hundreds probably. And it's just so many times people would ask questions. I'm like, we've covered that. He'd almost answered every question people could possibly think of, which is, again, now he's become way more mainstream, and like those episodes are kind of very old for that. But there's just so much goldmine of information that wasn't being eaten up by the majority of the population there. And he essentially gave me the confidence to then reach out to other experts within the field. And I basically just reached out to people who I'd been to their seminars. So I'd been to seminars with like Brad Schoenfeld, James Krieger, Brett Contreras, like a bunch of people in our space. And I was just like, I had their emails because their email had come through because of organizing the event. So I just reached out to them. I was like, would you be game for doing a podcast episode? And all of them, thankfully, were just like, yeah, hell yeah, let's do it. So that started to build my confidence to reach out to people and bring them on. And then I just started to build that network and also obviously get people back on to ask questions and develop topics. And as you all know, the field of like exercise science and specifically like within physique development, it's just exponentially grown over the past years. And I think the podcast that I do and have done is actually part of that growth, where I've spoken to people like the guys from Data Driven Strength, for example, like that exposure to those academics and then inspired them to want to go and pursue a career similar. And now I get to interview them, and it's like come full circle. So it's wild to see how much that's grown. So yeah, that was kind of like the beginnings of the podcast, was just like, hey, I want to chat with you, Mike. We've got questions left over. I want to learn, and hey, we can record this and other people can hear about it too.
So cool. I had no idea that really the podcast originated with Dr. Mike, and then all of these other huge names come kind of immediately following him. That's really incredible. I'm curious to know more about your what you were doing personally at that time outside of the podcast too. You mentioned that you organized a seminar and Dr. Mike was a guest that you invited and brought in. Were you working like as a personal trainer? Like, what were you doing in the fitness industry at the time?
So I was very early in my online coaching career at that point. So I had only recently moved out from home and stopped doing one-on-one personal training, which I did for a very short period of time. Basically, in 2014, I competed in natural bodybuilding for the first time. And at that same time, transitioned from a office job into one-on-one PT. And it just transpired that I was working with an online coach to help me to stage. And then there was guys maybe 3 to 5 years younger than me who were interested in what I was doing because they saw me doing this stuff in even in the gym. It wasn't common practice to like big compound lifts, and like lots of people were just curling and doing like arbitrary stuff. People weren't educated like they are now. People know what they're doing in the gym often now, especially at that age. There's so much information online, but back then there wasn't. So I just started to help these guys online for like £30 a month. I remember charging, and I just started to build this online clientele and started getting results with them in my like local gym. So I started just transitioning out of one-on-one PT and started doing more online stuff. So by 2015, I was full-time online coaching, and I'd moved out and lived with my girlfriend in London, and I've been there ever since, and with her. So at that time, I was just trying to build and invest, and I just kind of took a bit of a risk. And I just love the online side. I don't know if it's part of my personality, where I just enjoy being sat behind a computer and like typing away, but also probably anyone who's competed will know this. Anyone who's done a tough diet, when you're starting a new job and like in the depths of a diet, especially trying to get contest lean, for a front facing like service based job, not ideal because I just didn't have the energy. So I was like, hey, if I can sit behind a computer and work with people, that's ideal. Let's do that. So yeah, at that time, full-time online coaching, but not being like, I wasn't particularly successful at that point. I was still trying to build the base, the foundations of Revive Stronger, basically.
Right. What did you mentioned that you competed in 2014. That was your first time prepping and doing a show?
Yeah.
And your coaching clients, you're starting with coaching clients. You started the Revive Stronger podcast kind of all within this 2014 to 2015 period. Where did you want to take your natural bodybuilding at this point? Like, you're obviously super interested in it. You switched your career over to the fitness industry from an office setting. You started the podcast. It started with organizing the seminar, bringing Dr. Mike in, and then you started the podcast. What did you want to do with your natural bodybuilding at this point? Like, did you have any initial goals? Like, did you want to eventually become a pro in the WNBF? Were you thinking that far ahead, or did you just want to see how far you could take your own physique?
Great question. Yeah, was my initial, and this is something I ask every client that comes to me, like, why do you want to compete? Because it's pretty out there, it's pretty extreme, it's short term, it's certainly not great for your health and well being, and you need a good reason why you want to do it. Because as soon as you hit a hurdle, you'll be like, well, fuck that shit, I'm going to give up. But if you have a good, strong enough why, you can bear almost any how, is the saying. So my initial reason for why I wanted to get into it was because, and this is the kind of origin of Revive Stronger and that name, was because when I was at university in 2010, I've always been an active guy. Like, I do every sport there was. I was reasonably good at football or soccer at some point, and took that to some reasonable level, but kind of left that. And I'd never really found my thing. I just did a lot, and I was always reasonably good. I guess my genetic makeup is of like being pretty decent for just sports in general. Like, I was never the slowest, never the fastest. I was good, but I was good. Like, I was always good. So when I was at university, I do a lot of just solo running, and I was doing this 10K run. I would do, I don't know, every day or every other day or something. I was kind of a maniac, just trying to do as much as I could, and just like, hey, if my body got injured or something, then I'd pull back. But I'd also be weight training at the time as well. But on one of these 10-kilometer runs, I unfortunately got hit by a van. I was basically coming to some traffic lights that are flashing amber, and I was wearing my Garmin watch at the time, which has it had a really cool feature where I had a heart rate monitor. I was like fully invested into this thing, but I had a cool feature where you could see your previous run, and it was like a shadow, and you could see if you were ahead of it, like on your watch type of thing. I was always, it kind of tells you how I'm driven, always trying to beat my previous best. So I was on for like a PB, as it were, and I was literally less than 5 minutes away from my flat where I lived. So it came to these traffic lights, and I saw it was flashing amber, and I was like, I'm on for a PB, like I'm not stopping. I went, and then got hit by a white van, unfortunately, and that laid me up in hospital. I have some scarring, and I had some kind of stitching on that, and I fractured my skull, and that was the kind of like what we thought was the worst of it. But unfortunately, with that head injury came some long-term health consequences, which I still don't know precisely what it is. It's quite a unique thing, but they think I bruised my hypothalamus, and it took time for it to recover. But the hypothalamus is kind of like the control center for a lot of hormones and various aspects of your body. And so one of the immediate concerns was the sodium management, so like electrolyte balance. The way they told me, and the way I remember it, is I was like a camel. I just hold on to all water, basically. So that meant that I was on a fluid restriction. I could remember filling up the bottle, which was probably not much larger than like this little supplement container. It was 250 mils of fluid a day that I could consume. You imagine that? That's like a couple of gulps generally. So I was on that. I didn't feel thirsty though, because like I was hydrated. My body was just holding on to all this water. And if I had more than that, I was at risk of seizuring. So that's why I was basically what ended up happening is I left the hospital and I was home because they were like, yeah, you've just got like fractured skull, like short-term injuries, you're fine. I thought I was fine. And then basically a day later, I was like I just remember it's like a panic attack, vomiting, like really scared. My parents took me to A&E. And then I was in there for like a month.
I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode to let you know about the work that I do. I work full-time as an online physique coach, helping my clients to accomplish their muscle growth and fat loss goals by optimizing their approach to strength training and nutrition. I've been doing this work since 2018 and love helping my clients to transform their bodies and ultimately their lives. If you've been considering getting some help with accomplishing your own physique goals, you're invited to hit the link in the description below to learn a little bit more about the work that I do and how I can help you. You can even use that link to schedule a free video consultation with me. If you have any questions about my coaching or how I can help you, just email me at sam@jadeathletics.ca. All right, let's get back to the episode.
And they found I had these like hypoatremia, I think it's called, where basically you're like flooded. People know the saying, the dose makes the poison. And I was basically poisoning myself with water at this point because my body was just holding on to it all. So once that came to like a stable level, I was allowed out of hospital and I was on some medication. And that was, while I was on the fluid restriction. And that just took time to kind of sort itself out. Like, they say time is the greatest healer, and it couldn't be more right in that case. Once that had solved itself, and at this point I was still training, I was still really into it all, and it was great because I found like safety in the gym. Obviously I was hit on the run and I was on this fluid restriction, and that kind of left me quite unsocial. Like I wasn't going on nights out because I can't have alcohol and I don't feel that great. And then I was no longer doing the social life through like football or running clubs because I just didn't have the energy for it. And also just fell out of love with it. Whereas I fell in love with the gym. I was like, hey, this is something I can control. And I started to educate myself a bit about nutrition and, I can be in a surplus and I can gain weight and that can help muscle growth and all of that sort of stuff. There wasn't great information back then. So I certainly didn't learn the best stuff, but I applied some of the big principles like train hard, train often, and try and progress things and eat plenty of food and protein. So I was kind of doing all of that in the background. And I will get to, so that's kind of where Revive Stronger kind of started to come from, like as in that. So the reason I competed. So one thing that happened, I think it's important to include this in the story just for complete like clarity and I don't know, transparency, because I think some people think I might avoid it for whatever reason. But with the head injury, so once the kind of electrolyte balance solved itself, I'd done this like mass phase, and I found myself, I had lumps on my nipples. I was like, that was the fattest I'd ever been at this point. Like I call it a fat bulk. I think Alan Aaron calls it like a folk, where you just like eat all the food and all of this. I thought I was doing it well because I was eating quote unquote clean. I was like, how have I got fat? This makes no sense. I was in a huge surplus. That's why. And so I was concerned that it was something worse, like I don't know, cancer. It's a lump under my nipple. Who knows what it is? So I went and got an ultrasound, I think it is, and they identified I had gynecomastia. They're like, why does he have gynecomastia? Like, so they got some blood work done, and they basically found my testosterone was through the floor, like critically low. And I was like, they started asking me questions like, so when was the last time you had sex? Or like, I was like, I have no idea, like years ago. And then they were like, so you got any interest in like the opposite sex? Like, how's your kind of day-to-day energy levels? How's your mood? And I was like, to be honest, like I was pretty depressed at this point. I wasn't loving life. My energy levels weren't great. And I had zero libido. And I also had like seemingly lost the ability to grow body hair. I was so ignorant at the time. I was just like unwell and trying to find something to pursue and work hard. They're like, hey, this all aligns with what we found here. You have like critical low testosterone. Let's get you on. So I was on TRT for a short period of time where I took, I think it was called Testo Gel. It was like this gel I just rub into my nipples. And that was to get rid of the gyno, but also get me to healthy levels of testosterone. And man, it was a wild experience doing that. Going from like zero libido to like a incredibly horny teenager. That's one of the things I remember most. It was like uncomfortably like interested in that sort of thing. It's like, I don't know, you're dieting to 0% body fat. It's the amount you're interested in food. It was kind of on that scale. It's like, oh. And then I started to grow like body hair again. I was able to grow a beard again, this sort of thing. And my energy levels came back, and I continued to train in the gym, and I just felt so much better. And during this period of time, like I got a renewed motivation for life and for the gym and everything. And I found and stumbled across Matt August, 3DMJ. I started to educate myself a bit better, and I learned about natural bodybuilding. And I was just like, fuck, this is my thing. Like, this is what I'm doing in the gym. Like, this is building muscle, like trying to stay lean. This is it. I love what they're doing. I love what Matt August was doing. So I was like, I want to compete naturally. And then that just was like, well, I can't be taking testosterone because that's not natural. So I then asked my doctor, I was like, can I come off? He was like, well, most people when they go on TRT are on it for life, but your situation was pretty unique. So we can try and see how it goes. So I came off and was able to sustain low natural levels. And once that happened, I then got in touch with the UK Federation. So you mentioned the UK FBA. I got in touch with them. I got in touch with the MPA and some other federations, and some came back and were like, with doctor's notes and like all the information, we can give you like therapeutic exemption. Totally cool. And so did that with those. So I competed then in 2014 with the MPA and UK FBA. And at that time, my why was I just want to prove to myself that my body is like okay now. I can take it to the most extreme body comp and recover from it and be okay. I don't know why it's like a stupid, really like goal, right? It's like you've just put your body through the ringer. It was pretty fucked up. And now you want to do one of the most extreme sports there is and take your health to this extreme position. But it's just something about doing that meant I was free of that kind of shadow of ill health behind me. So I did it. I got pretty shredded, I would say, and came out the other side, and I was okay. Like I'd learned a lot. My girlfriend might disagree because I got with her like when I started that contest prep, and she was not particularly keen on me during the depths of prep. But I learned and got better. But yeah, I managed to come out of it, and I just learned so much, Sam, like about the process, about myself, and I fell in love with bodybuilding like nothing else. It for years I felt so out of control of life and my body and everything, and then to be able to do that and feel so in control and so empowered, I was just like, this is my thing. I've got to help other people do this. I want to learn how to do this better, because I realized I wasn't that great. I was pretty ignorant to the standards. I did my first novice show. I think I came third last in it. So I didn't do particularly well. Didn't place at the top 5 or anything. I think it was like 7th or something. And then at my next novice show, which was just like the UKFBA finals, I actually managed, I think I came joint 3rd, but I ended up getting 4th. And the nod went to the other guy for 3rd, but again, novice. And so, like, I remember my mum was like, "You just don't look like the other competitors." And I know what she means now. At the time, I didn't really get it. But what she meant was like that symmetry pose, the front relaxed. I just, especially when I first competed, I was just so straight up and down. And it's been my kind of Achilles heel throughout my competitive career is symmetry, particularly X frame. I don't have the best structure for bodybuilding, but I've managed to continue and do all right. So long story short, I kind of had poor health. I wanted to prove to myself I was recovered from that poor health. That meant taking it to stage and doing like everything in my power to kind of get there and come out of it and be like, hey, I can do this and I'm free of that ill health.
That is an incredible story. I'm just thinking and I'm imagining, like, from when you experienced the injury from being hit by the van to all of the complications that came from it, how it affected you hormonally, how it tanked your testosterone levels. At least that's what I suspect that from what you shared, that's where that root was rooted
Yeah.
from. It's interesting because I think if that would have happened to like anyone else or many other people, let's say, they would have gone far away from the whole fitness thing, like out of worry or like, hey, I want to be really careful with my health. Like I'll go focus on something else. But it is interesting. And even you noted that there's something interesting looking back in hindsight about how you kind of you did it in a sense to kind of prove to yourself like, hey, I'm not that feeble, I can recover, and not just recover, but I'm going to get on the bodybuilding stage and I'm going to like, I'm not just going to overcome, but I'm going to like take things as far as I can go, which I think is really cool. And not everyone, I'd say most people wouldn't go down that path. But something else I found really relatable too is like this love of bodybuilding and being able to have all this control over like, hey, I can do this thing, like I can lift weights and have control over the way that I eat, and that be something that can change my body. I have this control over my physique and how far I can take it. And that's something that I really, really love about it too. Probably one of the things that not only does really appeal to me, but has appealed to me right from the start. But that's really incredible. What, upon doing that first show and realizing that you had this passion for it, not just from doing the show, but as you got into lifting, did you start to develop your drive for natural bodybuilding? I know that you recently won your pro card within the last year or so, kind of following along. I think a lot of people were following along. Did that come into fruition as a goal at some point that you wanted to become a professional WNBF athlete? Or was that something that, you know, it happened and you're like, well, hey, like this is just the icing on the cake? Or where was your desire, or was there a desire to become a pro natural bodybuilder?
I think I always had like lofty goals in it, like every area of life, but I'm also a realist. And so, especially after my first season, I was just like, I just want to do better than that. And every season it's kind of looked that way. I just want to do better. And I think I never had the goal of going pro. And in fact, I was almost abundantly just thought I would never would. I didn't think I had what it took from a genetic standpoint. I could work as hard as I ever wanted at it. I didn't think it would come to me. I didn't think that I could get my physique to a level that it would be pro standard. But the longer I went and the more I invested, the closer I got to what I thought was actually like a pro standard physique. You'll know this as a competitor when you start sharing your physique and people assume you're pro already, and like, and you're like, no, I'm not pro. Like, I'm not there yet. They're like, oh, I just assume based off your physique, you're pro. I didn't really think about that in hindsight. It's only in hindsight do I think about that, where I'm like, oh, people already indicating, thinking I was on that standard. And I always analogize this like any career progression, like you almost have to be doing the next role to then get the promotion to do the role. It's very similar as a pro. Like you have to have a pro caliber physique to be worthy of turning pro. And so, yeah, my focus has never been on turning pro. I loved the idea of it. I love the idea of being my best and always bringing a better package to stage. And thankfully, every time I've competed, it has slowly leveled up. I'm definitely that bodybuilder who's slowly climbed the ranks, as opposed to like, I just interviewed a couple of natural bodybuilders, and both of them went pro in their first season. And I'm just like, it's just not my story. And like I said, in my first season, I was a novice and didn't do particularly well. My next season, I just wanted to do better than that. I competed in 2017, and I actually managed to get to 2 British finals and placed in both of those. And then 2021 came around, and I managed to get all the way to WNBF Worlds. What I will say is 2021 was a bit of a deceiving year, I think, because it was so close to COVID. I think the level of competition just wasn't quite up to par, especially internationally. So whilst I say I went to Worlds and I got second in the world as an amateur, which sounds amazing, it sounds really good. I didn't place in the top 3, sorry, in the UK show. We had a WNBF UK. I didn't place top 3. It's just the top 3 didn't want to go to Worlds. And they're like, hey, Steve, you can go to Worlds. I was like, if you really think I'll be competitive, I'll go. But I don't want to just be like a charity card here. My goal was to get to Worlds. And they're like, no, we think you'll do well. And thankfully, the UK is it's a very competitive scene. So if you're placing in top 5, you're probably going to do pretty well at an international level a lot of the time. But at Worlds, there was only 4 in our class. So I came second to a guy that's pro. He went like pro the year after that year. So he was very good. The other 2 were fine competitors, but there was only 2 of them, and it just wasn't highly competitive. So I still managed to improve my physique, though. Every season, it was level up in the physique for sure. And I quite clearly, from 2017 to 2021, gained almost 10 pounds of stage weight. So it was a big improvement, a big jump. I just got better at my processes, learned more, and put it to practice better. So then when 2024 came around, I was like, I haven't had a coach since my first season. Let's put a coach in my corner, arguably the best natural bodybuilding coach there is, Cliff Wilson. And especially for like the number of people he's taken to go pro. So let's see if a coach can level me up. Let's see that. And also I wanted Cliff specifically because he works differently to me. I know 3DMJ, for example, love those guys. They work very similarly to me. And I was like, I want to learn from someone who does things a little different. And I have full faith Cliff is going to get me in the best condition possible. So kind of went ahead with him. And it was only until I started, and I even asked him at the start of the season, like, do you think I could go pro? Like, what do you think? And I was like, this is such a silly question. Like, there's so many variables out my side of my control. And he never really led on anything. He just took me through the process. He never really answered any questions like relating to that sort of thing, which I totally get as a coach. Like, you're like, well, it depends on X, Y, and Z. Like, yeah, you have a good physique. And so I just went through it. But as I was dieting, I was like, hey, this is a completely different physique to before. Like, you might not have gained another 10 pounds of stage weight, but every pound you've gained above that is now that much more noticeable. I think once you get to like an average good competitor, every pound like above that, you start looking very different, even though it's a small amount of additional weight, because just most people don't get there. And I just say it's the power of persistence for me. I've just never given up and kept going and tried to get better. And so it wasn't until I went through, that season 2024, I started to believe a bit more that maybe I could go pro if things fell right. And they did. When I went and competed at the Netherlands, even that day, I didn't think, they were like, oh yeah, there's going to be pro cards handed out. I was just like, cool. And just went through it, and it landed kind of in my favor. But yeah, to your question, the WNBF pro card I love the idea of it, especially with the WNBF. I'd say probably the most competitive and best natural federation there is that brings about the best competitors. But I didn't really start to believe in it until I kind of got it. And then now it's about trying to prove myself as a pro. And now I'm like, that's a hard task. I'm now back at ground zero, or like playing on hard mode versus where it was before. So I didn't even get that many amateur wins under my belt. Maybe I should have just stayed an amateur for a bit longer, but I'm trying to make sure I can be a competitive pro now.
Did you find that upon winning the pro card, which I think is amazing, did you find that things changed as far like did it affect like your coaching business? Did it affect you from like a mental or a psychological from a mental or psychological standpoint where like you felt a sense of validation and maybe that boosted your ability to coach others, or maybe it gave you an extra layer of confidence with, as you noted, now your one of your goals is to prove yourself as a pro. Did it help kind of boost things along for you from a psychological standpoint?
Really cool question. And actually an interesting one because I think it's changed over time. So it didn't really sink in initially at all. And I still have these feelings surrounding it, but I still question whether or not I am pro worthy. Like, did I just get that because there was more than 8 competitors in my class and I was the best of not a great number of competitors? Like, I'm like, do people think that? Do they think I went to the Netherlands to compete in a less competitive show to just win a pro card? Like, I still think that. It's a horrible thought, and it's me being very transparent because I don't even like voicing that because I don't think that is true. And I know the guys that came second and third in particular are very good competitors. But part of me still has that like little inkling of like, man, do people still doubt me? Am I really pro caliber? And I had that like just horrible feeling, and actually it hasn't really left because I then competed in my pro debut in Switzerland. And I don't know if you've seen the footage or you've seen anything from that show, but the I came last, but the caliber of athlete was unbelievable. Everyone there were everyone who was there, sorry, at the Swiss show, apart from the guy that came second last before ahead of me, were placed in the top 5 at Worlds. So they were incredible. Like it was just Babacar was there, just as an example. Babacar,
And
the best
yeah,
bodybuilder in the world, right? He was at this
yeah.
like my pro debut. I was like, fuck's sake, why is he turned up? And there were other people who were of a similar caliber, not quite at Babacar's level, but they were people winning shows and very good pros. So for that to be my pro debut was a pretty tough battle. And that did a couple of things. One, it was like, in the moment, it was gutting to come last and just be like, man, that kind of proved that I'm not a good pro. But at the same time, I looked at the photos, like I was stood next to Babacar. And that's like, that's pretty incredible. First of all, just as like this guy who was not a great novice to suddenly take his bodybuilding to the point where he's standing against one of the greatest natural bodybuilders of our time. Like that's crazy to think that I've been able to do that. But also, I didn't look ridiculous next to him. Like, yeah, he's better than me for sure. Anyone could tell you that. People who don't know bodybuilding. But I wasn't like, this guy looks like he shouldn't even be standing there. I looked like I belonged in that lineup. And I did get a lot of confirmatory comments of people saying that, like, hey, Steve, despite the placing, you look like you should be there. You were competitive, especially with the last 3 of us. It was a bit tighter. And, you know, bodybuilding judging, there's some subjectivity and sometimes it can go in your favor, sometimes not. So that kind of, again, in some ways, similar, like I said before, there was some doubts, but also there was some like, no, I am worthy. And then I went to Worlds. Definitely didn't bring my best physique. There was a number of reasons for that. And I came second last in my class, huge class. It might have been the biggest on the day or one of the biggest. But what I think I failed to recognize is when you compete at Worlds, it's the best of the best. This wasn't a COVID year, and this was pros. And there was like close to 20 in our class, and like it was just a lot. And so I think I'm maybe giving myself a bit of a hard time with some of these placings and that sort of thing. And again, I know I judge. When there's a lot of people to judge, it's pretty hard to try, like, as a judge with the WNBF UK, we just judge 1 through 7, basically 1 through 6, and then everyone's a 7 after that, because you need to focus on getting the top 6 right, and that takes time, and you don't have all the time in the world. But Worlds, they're trying to place 1 through 20 or whatever it was. Like realistically, the final 10, they could be flip flopped in so many different directions. I imagine, like just being honest about how judging goes. I'm sure it was like pretty well judged, but at the same time, I know that's a part of it, and maybe that's me coping a little bit. But still, I didn't come last. It was the most competitive lineup there could possibly be in the world, is the best of the best. So to not come last is kind of like a bit of a like, hey, that's a good thing, really. And again, to hold my own in that class, knowing I didn't have my best physique, who knows if everyone else did. I don't know if I answered your question, but in a roundabout way, I still have my doubts. I think this is just a part of my personality. I'm my own worst enemy. I can immediately see all my flaws all the time. And I just, what I do is constantly work on those, essentially. And I give myself a hard time with a lot of things. But I don't really regret that because it makes me better. But what I will say is I do feel I have a pro-worthy physique. And once I felt like I did, truly in myself, people can tell me I don't care. I had to feel it in myself, and I really felt like I earned it. And I do feel that way, and I do feel like I'm a pro caliber. And I think next time I compete as a pro, I'll prove that to myself and others. And I want to be competitive in lineups, and I'm confident I will be. And that's given me confidence to use that almost as like a, hey, like to give further evidence to the things that I say, that I can be confident that they're right in a sense. Like, I am a WNBF pro. This is what I do. Like, you can learn from me that way. I can't say it's had like I didn't suddenly get a flood of clients or competitors or anything like that. It really didn't change my business. It didn't change me and my self-perception really. But yeah, that's a long-winded answer. I feel like all my answers have been really long-winded. I'm sorry, Sam.
No, this is amazing. Actually, it's interesting. It's the way that you described it. It's kind of like you won and you second guess yourself about initially winning. Like, hey, I competed. It was in the WNBF Netherlands. I won my pro card there. You question like, hey, do people wonder this about me? Do I wonder this about myself? Did I go just so I could win because it's a lower caliber show? All the way to then you won, which is fantastic. And then you won the card, the pro card, and then you competed, and then you had that experience of placing last in that next show and then competing and placing the bottom half at Worlds, which still, like you noted, is these are the top tier athletes in the world. So putting that into perspective, it's an incredible accomplishment. You're up there with the pro natural bodybuilders. It's a whole tier above amateurs. And it's something about it reminds me kind of, it's a little bit different, but it reminds me of other competitors, other pros, like people that I also really look up to, like Jeff Alberts and Eric Helms of 3DMJ. Like, Jeff didn't win his pro card until he was 38, I think. And like he competed for like 16 or 17 years before like even getting to the level of having pro status. Like, he didn't even have the opportunity to come last place in a pro show. And I think Helms didn't win until he was 40. That was like in 2023, I think. So same thing, like even for him is like, it took a long time just to get to have the opportunity to, place at all with other pros. So I think just like that's just what came to mind for me listening. I know it's a little bit different, but just, I feel like a lot of natural bodybuilding pros have these kind of initial challenges that they face along the way. And for in one way or another, if it's just like a really long process to eventually winning the pro card or having these kind of mental struggles where you're second guessing yourself regularly, the way you describe that, I can really relate to, because I have that kind of personality too, where I'm second guessing myself, how good I am. And like, if I belong out here or not. And like, if I am, I'm an amateur, so I'm wondering like, do I have what it takes to win a pro card? But I'm always kind of second guessing myself the way that you described it. And I think I find a lot of relatability in your story and the way that your thought process works. It's actually kind of nice to hear that. It's like, hey, I'm not alone in this. And it's there's an element that's really inspirational. Something that I'm wondering on, just doubling back a little bit, is I know that 2024 season, you decided, hey, I'm going to work with Cliff Wilson, not because he's similar to my kind of coaching, like the 3DMJ guys per se, but you went out of your way to work with him because you suspected that he works differently from you and you wanted to learn from him. You trusted him. But not only did you trust that he would help you take things to where you wanted to take them as far as you possibly could for that season, but you also wanted to learn from his different coaching strategy. So I guess what I'm wondering is, in what ways is he different, or have you found that he is different with his coaching the way that he does things versus how you would have done things for yourself?
Yeah, great question. So uh, Cliff, I'd actually met him in person because we brought him over for a seminar. So I knew I really got on with Cliff, just so that that's very clear. And I've also had him on the podcast multiple times, chit chatting, and it's actually kind of similar to my experience with Mike Israetel, as I mentioned at the start, where he thinks a bit differently to what I'd been exposed to. Cliff, similarly, thinks a bit differently. He doesn't seem to lean so heavily on evidence as what I like tend to, and yeah, his check-in process is different too. So I, with my clients, generally want them to do a video diary, and then I'll report back to them with a video response. So we have that line of communication. It's very clear. It's like on that lines. Whereas Cliff is just all email based, and so that's very different. And it feels much less hands-on, which I really liked at times and didn't at times. I would have liked the way I do it at various times, just to be very frank. Actually, what was your question? I know I've just gone on a tangent and I can't
No,
remember what the actual question was
this,
now.
this is good so far. In what ways
How was he
did you
different?
suspect that his coaching is different than how you would have gone about like coaching yourself or coaching your
Yeah,
clients or the 3DMJ guys, how they coach?
cool. Yeah, no, exactly. So having had those discussions with him on the podcast in person, I know he thinks a little bit differently, a little bit more outside the box, more willing to move away from like quote unquote the like research heavy stuff. So I wanted to see what that was like. And then his check-in process again was different with the email check-ins, much less hands-on in that sense. So I wanted to get that. And then Cliff is known for peaking. Like that's the thing he's known for. I don't know if he's happy with that, but he's known for peaking. He's known for getting people shredded. He's known for the rapid backload in particular. I just wanted to experience that. I didn't necessarily want to experience the rapid backload. I didn't know that that would be what we'd use or not. I just wanted to experience how does Cliff peak people. So I wanted to experience all of that, get like a feeling for it. So he only did my nutrition. I did all my training, so I didn't get to experience that side of things. Apart from in peak weeks, he gave me a plan to basically follow, which is kind of deload-esque, to put it that way, which isn't too dissimilar. In the big principles, like it wasn't like, I don't know, he has a carnivore diet approach and I don't know what various things you could think of that were like really different. It was very much tiny, nuanced differences that I just wanted to like discover and pull apart from him to see what I could learn and apply to myself in future and also to my own coaching. And yeah, it definitely helped me learn things. And the actual biggest thing I learned from working with Cliff was how valuable it is to have someone in your corner when there's periods of stress and worry, because 2024 was, for reasons outside of competing, my most stressful year to date due to life. And so having him there was unbelievably helpful because I had enough things going on that was taking stress. So to just be like, yep, cool, Cliff, I followed the macros, I'll get it done. And I just did it. So that was interesting. I also, a big thing I wanted to learn, Sam, was obviously Cliff is known for taking people to the stage and getting them shredded. I know I've got shredded before, but not like I haven't had those lines in my glutes like a Brett Freeman or a Dirk Emmerich type of detailed glutes. So I wanted to see like, hey, if I have someone in my corner, can they take me further in that regard than I can take myself? In previous preps, have I just not pushed myself hard enough to kind of bring that detail through, or is there something else to it? So yeah, Cliff is known for people pushing people like to their limits in a good way. So I wanted to learn about myself. Like, was I holding back during self-coaching periods, or did I do what I needed? Did I do the right thing in those occasions? I learned that I'd done the right thing. Actually, he did push me to places I hadn't gone before, but I'm not sure it was the juice was worth the squeeze at that point. I think it actually led to me being maybe a bit of a poorer bodybuilder. But sometimes those are the risks you have to take to know. But I certainly can push myself, and if anything, have to be held back to kind of bring about the best look.
What were a couple examples of some of those like small nuanced changes, like as far as like peaking goes? If you're open to sharing, like was it a difference in like, hey, like he's getting me to track my sodium where I otherwise would kind of estimate, but I wouldn't track as much. And I'm wondering if you could give a couple of examples there, or even just one. And also, actually, maybe let's start there if you're open
Yeah.
to it.
No, for sure. I don't think I haven't signed anything, but it means I can't talk about it with Cliff at least, and I'm open to talking about it. So my general approach to peaking is like I follow a lot of the same philosophies and principles that Cliff would, but he has like a quite fundamental change in diet. So he'll deplete. Generally for me, I have tried them and I just tend to not find the best results. He has a depletion, or at least the peaking I did with Cliff. Let's say that they were all rapid backloads. So I said, "Would you put me on a rapid backload?" Every peak was a rapid backload. That meant there was a depletion period and then a 1 day of high carbs to then fill you out, super compensate, and bring you to stage. Or that's the goal: is super compensation through the depletion period. You can kind of store more glycogen than you normally can, and so that was different. The depletion period, and that was meal plan. So he gave me the exact foods to eat. I don't typically do that. Typically, I'm like, hey, find foods that digest well for you and stick to those during your kind of peak week. We kind of maybe pull back a bit of fiber and a bit of like the veggies so that we're not bloated or anything like that. And then carb up again on foods that you're used to. Whereas again, with Cliff, he told me the times to eat and the foods to eat like every step of the way. And then also the amount of salt to add to meals and also fluids. So how much total fluids to consume. So that's also something I tended not to do with clients. In fact, I don't think I'd ever done it before this with clients. I have manipulated it since, but he'd water load going into peak week as well. So that was new. I really did not enjoy that. It was probably my least favorite part of the whole process was water loading because of just the huge amount of fluids you have to consume, which is really uncomfortable. Also, with my bad health, I was a little bit concerned about that aspect because of the sodium and hypoatremia. But thankfully, I proved to myself again I can handle all the fluid now and piss it all out. And I was pissing a lot, which is pretty stressful. So those were some big differences: water loading, and then like meal plan based eating. And then I had tried rapid backloads, but not in the same way as Cliff does it. So sorry, water loading, meal plan based eating, and that meal plan prescribing foods, which might even have been foods I weren't in my diet before, and then also specific timings, but that was more related to the rapid backload, where when you're trying to get a lot of carbohydrates in a short period of time, you have to be very specific with it, and you have to have multiple feedings like through the day. So yeah, those were some big differences in the peak.
You mentioned that it was a little bit stressful, like with all of the water loading and maybe like a little bit of uncertainty around loading up on foods that you wouldn't normally eat. Did you find that, like, would you do that peaking process again? Was it worth it? Did you find that like it did add an extra couple percent to your physique, or do you think that next time you compete, you would fall back to something that you'd done in the past?
It's a really good question. Unfortunately, I don't feel well equipped to answering it because I got the pro card, got a great look, and the looks for each stage presents were decent. They weren't bad looks by any means. Do I think I could have got the same looks with a different approach? I do, but I didn't do it. So I don't have anything to like say yes. But I think I've had similar peaks in previous seasons that were far less stressful. Yeah, my personal experience is I think the rapid backload's pretty cool, especially maybe used once, especially to like it can for the first time I used it, which was for the Netherlands show, it brought in extra detail because the depletion, you're actually in quite a severe calorie deficit, depending on how you do it. But for that, and it brought in new condition quite rapidly for that week, which was quite cool. So it can work like that. Like if you need more fat loss off, like it can be a great protocol in that regard. And then you obviously are left to less time. But the stress and the hassle, honestly, it was quite stressful and quite a lot of hassle. And I do wonder if the benefits of such approach are counteracted by the elevated stress. Like you have to wake up early to start carving up on that like Friday before the show, say. And then, I mean, I was waking up. I can't remember what my record of peeing through the night was, but it was racking up to like 10 times a night. Your sleep's trash. So I think some of the stresses counteract some of the benefits that you might get. So it's not an approach that I regularly take with clients. And I don't know if I'd do it again or want to in future.
I definitely get that. For my first ever competition, I was coached by Menno Henselmans. I know you've had
Awesome.
him on the show a lot. And he had me do something similar. It wasn't I don't think you'd call it a rapid backload. It was more like a rapid midweek load.
Sure.
Tons of carbs on the Wednesday, the day of, the morning of. What really, really killed me was he had me doing a depletion workout. So there was depletion, like very few carbohydrates in the deficit for days leading up to the Wednesday. And then the Wednesday morning, I have a special depletion workout on top of already depleting from having very few carbohydrates without going into ketosis, basically. And I found that like those couple days were just nasty, and I wasn't nearly like as lean as what you'd classify as elite level conditioning, like where you were. And I remember it's like, as a first time competitor, it was like, for my, it was the leanest I'd ever been at the time. But that depletion workout and the low carbs, very, very low carbs in the deficit in the days leading up were pretty stressful for me. That's what I remember. I loved the loading. Like, I ate a lot of pancakes.
Yeah.
That was great. Menno let me pick my own food choices. He gave me
Nice.
suggestions, but just like filling up on rice and potatoes and that sort of thing wouldn't have been as fun, I don't think.
Yeah, the potatoes wouldn't. I found a way of eating the potatoes that made them all right, but some of the meals as well were like, one of the meals was literally like boiled potatoes, or boiled. I think I boiled them, but potatoes with just salt, and that was the meal. And I was like, God, you got to do what you got to do.
You close your eyes and imagine you're eating like a really delicious batch of hash browns at some brunch restaurant, and kind of just imagine you're somewhere else. Yeah. Something that you mentioned earlier was getting to the place where you had like really, really etched out glutes, which you hadn't quite accomplished yet up to that point in prior seasons. Did you find that when you were working with Cliff, was there any little thing extra that you had to do to accomplish the really, really etched out glutes? Or was it just as simple as, no, I just had to lose a little bit more body fat. I just had to diet a little bit harder, a little bit longer. I just needed to get leaner. What did you find there?
Yeah, so I have always been able to get lines in my glutes on the side. On the right side, I pretty much carry those into my off season. They're just always hanging around for whatever reason. On the left side, they're a bit more stubborn, take a bit more time to come in. Those have always come in. From the rear, I haven't had like all the lines coming through, and I still didn't get that. I got more, and they were kind of there when I really like flex my hips forward. But to get those in, I sacrificed other areas of my physique. Particularly my chest comes in really early, and I have like striations through my chest again in my off season. So it meant that had to get really flat, and I think I lost a lot of size through my chest, through my delts, through my back. So my upper body just started to really dwindle, and it wasn't worth the sacrifice to get like semi lines through the glutes from the rear. So I think what I learned is, yeah, I can push deeper, and fat loss is going to keep happening, but you might kind of the risk might not be worth the reward. And so I learned that for future, possibly I just, people have different genetics, and they have different kind of intervention points for how far you can push someone for fat loss before other things just start dwindling. But what I learned was, right, two things. One, I need to build my upper body more so it can deal with pushing my lower body leaner. And two, let's try and make my glutes even bigger, because I've never prioritized glutes at all. Let's put in some direct work to see if making those even bigger allows them to come through more, because my glutes have never been a weak point from like size, but clearly that's where my body that's the stubborn fat is just on the glutes. So I think that's what I learned.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, there was no magic, nothing special.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Over the weekend, I watched the WNBF Ontario. There's a free live stream. It was a really awesome competition. And I watched the different open bodybuilders, the heavy, light, and middles. And I'm thinking of the heavyweights, and the competitor who won, he didn't have glute striations. He maybe had like a little bit there, and maybe if you were up close and in person, maybe they would have shown a little bit more. But from what I was seeing in the live stream, and I know it's camera, it's not showing the whole story, but he didn't have super clear visible glute lines, but he had lines everywhere else, and he was huge, gigantic. And or at least from my perspective. And I could kind of tell as soon as he was on the stage that he was going to win, even though despite not having deep glute lines, which is interesting because I fall into this where it's like I am going through a prep and I'm thinking like, man, fat loss isn't over until I can see all the detail in my glutes. Like it's like a shredded glute competition more than like a bodybuilding competition. And it was actually really nice for me to sit back and watch this competition happen and be like, no, like this guy, like I can tell he's going to win and he doesn't have like glute lines and I don't really care.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really interesting. Do you have planned the next time you're going to prep and do your next season?
I don't have planned, that's for sure. I never thought I'd say this because I've always taken 3+ years between seasons, but I'm considering next year. One of the reasons I'm considering that is I'm getting into my later 30s and I'm eager to just step on stage more often with the physique that I've been able to develop. Like the improvements I'm going to make I still think I can make improvements, but they're going to be smaller, not as dramatic as earlier. And I'm at my kind of near my peak, as it were. So I think taking it to stage more often makes sense from that perspective. I'm also eager to kind of wet my feet a bit more within the pro leagues and try some different pro shows around Europe and what have you, maybe even travel a bit further afield, which would be pretty cool. And I'm leaner than I've ever been at like what am I over stage? I'm not much over, like I could drop 10, 15 pounds and step on stage now. And I don't know, like it's deep since I haven't competed. It's not quite a year since I competed, but I've just managed this off season really closely and stayed quite lean. And I think I've made some really big improvements. I sound so hypocritical. I like to think I've made some significant improvements. They're not really big, they're tiny, but I think they'll be visible and they'll make a real difference on stage. So I am considering next year, but it's always that you always get into that position, like, but just a bit more off season, a bit more time, building a bit more muscle. I'll be that little bit more competitive. So I think either next year or be the year after, because I don't want more time than that. I like, you mentioned Eric Helms, and I do view my kind of pro card winning similar to his. He always has been, but very much an inspiration for me. And he obviously had a quick turnaround where he's competing this year and he earned it in 2023. So I'm kind of like, if it works out for Eric, maybe it'll work out for me again. So I'll consider next year, but no plans just yet.
That's cool. Something that I'm all of a sudden wondering is, so you described your last season and the seasons before that, so years of bodybuilding, and all the whilst you're regularly holding interviews with experts in the fitness industry, PhDs, professional natural bodybuilders, people that are right in the thick of fitness research, and you're getting a lot of different ideas and advice and theories as you're interviewing different people. And you mentioned this right kind of earlier on in our conversation, that sometimes you'll have people come on and you'll nod along with them, even though maybe you're not fully bought into what they're telling you or they're teaching you. So, which I think is great, coming from a very unbiased standpoint, and having such a wide variety of guests to be able to share a wide variety of information for everyone that's listening to be able to pick different things out and to learn from. But that leaves you with all of these different schools of thought around like building muscle and fat loss. And I remember like you having debates on like refeeds and diet breaks and the P ratio, and like people are debating about these things. Professional or experts, I should say, are debating on these things. Did you ever find, like, throughout your own personal bodybuilding journey, or maybe even with the work that you do coaching your clients, that like, does that ever become overwhelming? Do you ever find yourself like questioning yourself, like, hey, like I'm getting all of these different ideas thrown at me. A lot of them are conflicting. Like, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how to coach my clients. Or is it kind of like, I'll pick and try different things, see what works for myself, and then I'll stick with that? Or what's your process been as far as that goes?
Great question. I my immediate thought was all the time. So like, am I questioning myself? Am I doubting myself? All the time. Not in a big way, but I'm always thinking, could I be doing this better? Is there a different way for a variety of different situations? And I think that's really healthy to have that mindset. I think as soon as you stop learning or think you know it, that's a huge problem. It's a big red flag when you see coaches' practices not improving over time. They do the same carbon copy plan for every single person. If a client signed up with me today versus 5 years ago, they'd be like, oh, this is different, Steve. I'd be like, good. Like, it should be different because I'm learning and I'm upgrading. I'm making things better as I go. The fundamentals, though, very much the same, which is why I can be doubtful and questioning of small things, but feel incredibly confident that so long as these big rocks are in place, we're all good. So you mentioned like people debating, they're generally debating things that are to some people arbitrary or very minor, like a refeed, for example, or P ratio, and it's things we actually generally in some situations just don't have answers to yet, like hard answers. So it is very much like opinion, experience based. So I very much, and I encourage listeners, if they ever feel this way, like a bit lost and confused, draw the parallels between people. Like I mentioned, Mike Israel and Eric Helm previously, like in some people would view them as quite diverse in their views, but where do they cross? Like, what are they both absolutely in agreement with? And generally it's like the big principles, and it's just the tiny little nuance to little things that ultimately like aren't maybe too particularly important. So that's what I do for myself and with clients. And but exactly as you said, I do like to, there's even been guests on who I wasn't sure about having, and I'm very often glad I've had them on. So, for example, like a coach Kasim, I've said this before, where when I first saw his content and I spoke to some people that maybe knew him, they were like a bit like unsure if I should have him on the podcast. And I also was like, oh, some of his content's quite diversive and it's very different to like recommendations again from a Mike Israel, who I really respect. But I was like, he's not doing anything here that's like obviously wrong or obviously like going to lead to poor results. And lots of people seem to respect him and he gets great results. Like, oh, got to be open-minded. Let's bring him on. So glad I did, because I've had some of the best discussions with him. And I think he brings a completely different and unique angle to kind of training and nutrition that like others don't. So I've always, every time I've pushed myself to get a bit uncomfortable with a guest that maybe I don't fully align with, I've always been able to take something from their approach. Even you mentioned Menno. Menno's someone, particularly in the past, where I saw quite, he often had a bit of a like different approach to things and a different view and lens on things. And that made me feel a bit uncomfortable. But yeah, I've learned a lot from Menno and enjoyed having him on. But there's things I don't fundamentally like completely agree with him. And that's okay. I think that's really professional and healthy to have, like, you can have relationships with people and not agree with everything. And now I draw upon my like 20 years in the gym experience, 10 years coaching individuals, and then that almost 10 years talking to experts in the field and staying on top of it by talking to them, being subscribed to the Mass Research Review. And like, I think it's that kind of confidence in that body of evidence that you now have. It's like I've also turned myself pro. Like you should feel confident in what you're doing, considering everything behind you, and that's allowed me to be in a place where I'm like, I have clients who get stressed out by these little like, oh, this person, I don't know, posted this reel and so on and so forth, and I'm just like, chill, it's really not that big a deal. But I get it, because I was also that guy at one point.
Yeah. What do you I asked you this about your natural bodybuilding goals and when you're going to compete next, but what are your main goals for Revive Stronger, the podcast? And I know you have another podcast too, the Improvement Season, but what are your goals for Revive Stronger? Where do you want to do you want to keep growing it? Do you want it to be bigger? I think you mentioned initially in the beginning of our conversation too that you're thinking of kind of expanding, that you're having some like natural bodybuilding, like a natural bodybuilder roundtable that's coming up soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, how are you planning on expanding it? Like, what are your goals for it in the future, if that is a part of it?
Yeah, I guess it's similar to my bodybuilding, where I'm just enjoying the process, and that process takes me to greater heights, and wherever it takes me, it kind of takes me, as it were. like with my bodybuilding, like I said, I never had the goal of a pro card. Like in my off season, some people will set, like, I don't know, they want to hit some squat PR, and I'm like, I'm just gonna do the process, and it's gonna lead me to whatever I get. And it's similar with Revive Stronger and everything there. I do want to take more athletes to stage. You mentioned, I don't know if it was on air or off air, but you're wanting to grow that side of your kind of business, if I can say that. You can edit it if you can. But I think you want to, have more competitors. You mostly work with Gen Pop. Most of my roster is they're not, I wouldn't call them like Gen Pop. They're more coaches who might compete, but a lot of them don't. They might do photo shoots. A lot of them just want, like, they love it, but they don't want to take it to stage. That's the majority of my clientele. I do want to get some more competitors, and particularly the competitors now I'm lucky enough to have had people for years and have taken them through, and will have taken them through multiple seasons. And I want to be able to take them to their greatest heights. So I definitely want to do that, like just continue to kind of earn my stripes as a coach and get better and better at it. And I want to continue to grow my team. So with Mike Chalice and Ryan Solomon on the team, I want to continue to expand their coaching roster and kind of get them further within their own coaching experience as well. If demand comes where I can bring on another coach, I'd love to. I have multiple people that I'd be interested in having on the team, but it's one where there's a lot of coaches, and there's, like, the demand is only what the demand is. And with AI, that's a whole topic in its own right. But artificial intelligence is obviously making things easier from, like, getting into the gym, and there's less barriers to entry for knowledge, which I mentioned at the start too. I think the way that we coach at Revive Stronger is going to differentiate ourselves and allow us to truly coach more than what an AI or an app or anything can give you. But I still think that just reduces demand potentially a little bit. I don't have any, like, big goals outside of that. I recognize I make a good living. I really love what I do. And I think there is a point where you can get to a size or even have employees, which I don't have any employees, with the coaches on the team. They're like, you outsource type of thing. It's not like they're an employee for me. I recognize that's more stress, and you might end up earning more, but you might have more expenses. So I'm kind of like, I'm at this point where I'm just quite happy with where it's at. And if I really want to expand, then it's going to take quite a big shift, I think, in what we're doing. I would love the podcast to be bigger. And one of the ways that I want to make it bigger is by bringing in a wider audience. So, and potentially having discussions a little bit outside the scope of just like purely evidence-based, but I think will still be really, really beneficial to the listeners. For example, those roundtables, I want to talk to more, I would like to bring on Bob and Tina, who run the WNBF, have more in-depth discussions surrounding testing to help grow natural bodybuilding, as it were. And then, we'll just have to see. But as long as I enjoy the ride, it's similar to my bodybuilding journey itself. As long as I'm enjoying it, I don't mind. And like, there's no downsides to what's going on. Like, I'm still able to put food on the table. I'm happy with where it's at. I have no like major goals to like release an app or anything crazy like that. Not for the time being, at least.
Yeah. I'm super excited to see how it continues to grow, and I'm excited to see the upcoming the natural bodybuilding roundtable that you have coming up, and all your future guests, and how the plans that you have to grow the popularity of natural bodybuilding. And I've already learned so much from your podcast, and it's had a huge positive impact on me. Like I mentioned, I think it must have been 2017. I stumbled on some of the first episodes that I listened, and I've been listening for years. So I'm excited to continue listening. Some of what you mentioned just now, it reminds me of, I asked Jeff Albert something similar about like when the 3DMJ podcast started, and I can't remember the exact context of the conversation, but I remember him just saying like what kept him going in the beginning before they like really blew up, and like not just their podcast, it was before their podcast, when they first started their coaching business, the four of them, I think. He said it was just, we kept going in the beginning just because we loved it. It's like, we just loved it so much. And that was like, I don't know. I think that's the core to their success. And it sounds like that might be one of the cores to your success as well. It's just like the passion and the curiosity and the desire to keep getting better with the whole fitness thing and natural bodybuilding. So this interesting about the AI as well. I've thought a lot about that. I mean, I think a lot of people think a lot about that. My theory is that for online physique coaches that keep real one-on-one communication, not, hey, that you're going to be coached by an AI bot, or the AI is going to make your program or whatever, or just, make a program out in chat GPT. I think there's a chance that the demand for this kind of the kind of real one-on-one communication coaching, I think the demand might actually, my theory is that maybe not immediately, but eventually it'll go up, for the reason
Sure.
that human beings are social creatures. And like, it's even, as you noted, working with Cliff, one of the benefits that you got from working with him wasn't just the things, that the nuance changes that he included, like with your peaking and the differences in the email coaching, but that you had a human being to communicate with during 2024, which I think you mentioned was a tough year.
Yeah.
And that would be different if it was like an AI, thing, that you're not actually talking to a human being. So I think that's my theory anyways. That's what I'm
Yeah.
telling myself. But yeah, this has been awesome, Steve. I really appreciate you being so gracious with your time. And I've been a big fan of the Revive Stronger podcast and the work that you have done for a lot of years. So it's been really cool to get to pick your brain a little bit, and to get to learn a little bit more, and to get to know you better. So this has been awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Sam. It's, yeah, like I said, it's nice to be on this end of things, and yeah, I'm excited to have more chats like this. And good luck with your podcast, with your coaching and everything. And I think you're right with AI. I think people are going to lean into that one-on-one human connection a little bit more, which is why I need to organize our Team Revive Christmas get together soon, actually, because I know it's crazy to say Christmas already, but it's August and we're organizing things, so it's coming too
The
fast.
summer's coming to an end. It'll be here before you know it, for
Yeah.
sure. Where's the if someone's interested in working with you or looking into the Revive Stronger podcast, what's the best way to get a hold of you? What are the best ways to get a hold of you if they're interested in coaching, or to learn more about you, or to start looking into the Revive Stronger podcast if they haven't yet got into it, which I'm sure most who are listening have already, but even so.
I hope so. Yeah. So www, I don't know why I'm saying www.revivestronger.com. Would you even need the W's anymore? I don't
You
even know.
forgot the HTTP.
Yeah, there you go. Slash.
Dash. Yeah.
So revivestronger.com, and that has all our coaching, has the podcast on there as well. Or if you search any podcast provider, Revive Stronger, we're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. So you can find all of that there. And yeah, tune in to actual experts speaking about things, and me asking dumb questions or useful questions, hopefully.
I'll include that in the description below. So cool. Well, thanks for this, Steve. It's been awesome.
Thank you.